The story takes place at a small hotel where I worked at. My coworker had just finished up her 8 hours and I was due to leave pretty soon. It was 10 p.m. on a weekday, so the only people working there were me and the dining lady, who also cleans and does a few other odd jobs around the hotel. We were at low occupancy, so it was dead quiet. The lobby and the sitting area were really empty. Really, my only comfort was the TV. It was an easy night, so at least I had that going for me. Then I get a call. The caller ID didn't display a 9-digit number like it usually does, but instead, it's the last 4 digits of the hotel's phone number, which does tend to happen if someone's calling from one of the phones in the hallway. Also, guest calls almost always come through the front desk phone designated for rooms, but at times they end up being directed to the superset phones, and so the caller ID will show the last 4 digits of the hotel phone number. So it wasn't out of the ordinary, just rare. So anyways, there I am enjoying the quietness, Googling random shit to pass the time, and I pick up the phone and this guy answers. He sounds like he's in his 30s, maybe early 40s. He sounds really happy. He asks me how I was doing that night, which was really refreshing for a change. I engage, even though I honestly really wasn't in the mood. He laughs and jokes around before then asking if anyone's made a noise complaint. Not to my knowledge, I tell him, wondering in the back of my mind if I had heard anything that night. So it continues rather slowly because he's chuckling behind his words. I begin to hear someone else, a woman, in the background. So I think that's cute. This guy sounds like he's having a blast with his wife or something like that. They're probably in there getting turned as hell. Then he says,
"Well, I was just calling to make sure because, you see, my mother-in-law is here with me and she can't stop laughing."
I begin to laugh a little. How nice was it for him to call out of the concern for the other guests? I hear her as he's speaking. She's a little loud, but not enough for it to penetrate the walls or anything. I tell him it's totally fine. No big deal, honestly. I expect him to say something out of relief and hang up, but he just continues. I don't remember exactly what he said, but much of it was just him reiterating,
"It's just that she's laughing so much and won't stop."
I try to be as nice and understanding as I can and just insist that it's fine once again. Then he asks me,
"Do you know why she's laughing?"
He wants to have a conversation now. I honestly couldn't care less why his mother-in-law was laughing, but I'm a front desk agent. We do more than check people in and out. Sometimes we have to entertain. So I ask, why? Why is she laughing? And then he starts laughing. He can't spit out his words fast enough because he's freaking laughing, and I hear her too, and I'm getting annoyed and slightly uncomfortable now. I wait another few seconds before he says it.
"Because I'm tickling her feet. That's why."
Looking back now, I think to myself, why didn't I just hang up on the phone right then and there? There weren't words that I could use to respond to this guy, because who the hell would, right? I was already hungry and tired. Now I was hungry, tired, confused, and mildly offended. And like an idiot, instead of shutting him down, I just laughed and said, okay? And the guy goes,
"Yeah, I'm tickling my mother-in-law's feet and she loves it. She can't stop laughing."
For some reason, I just couldn't control the nervous spurts of laughter that were coming out of my mouth. I'm listening to this woman in the background who sounds like a broken record at this point. She's laughing uncontrollably while I'm crying internally.
"Oh yeah,"
he says.
"She really loves it and I like it too."
He sort of stopped laughing at this point, and his voice then took on a really serious tone. And can you guess? I still didn't hang up the damn phone. I think at that point I was just zoning out. The dude just continues to talk about how much he's enjoying this. Good for you, I tell him, and I try to cut it off right there.
"Do you like your feet tickled?"
he asked me.
"Tickling my mother-in-law's feet makes me a little horny. I wish it was my wife, but she's not here right now."
And that's where I kind of blinked and realized that this guy didn't call because he was concerned about a noise complaint. He's rambling on about his mother-in-law's feet while I'm at the front desk simultaneously helping other guests, and I can't put down the phone because I just can't believe I'm in this situation. Then I get the thought in the back of my mind that the mother-in-law's laughing just a bit too much. She hadn't said anything throughout the entire phone call like stop it or quit it. Her laughs were all the same, like they were on a freaking loop or something. Someone came to check in and I had to tell Feet Creep that I had to go. He sort of hesitated for a bit, like he wanted me to stay and talk a bit longer. His voice trailed off and I still heard the lady laughing in the background. I took that as my cue to hang up. I closed the blinds in the lobby and kept my ass behind the desk unless my help was desperately needed elsewhere. The dude talking about him tickling his mother-in-law's feet wasn't the thing that really scared me. It was more of the fact that the Feet Creep's call came through the superset phone without his last name and room number displayed on the caller ID. So I didn't know who was calling or if they were even in-house. That, and because I'm pretty sure that the woman in the background was definitely a recording. It was really creepy.
This happened a little over 2 years now. I wanted to post it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson that I learned. Yes, this is real. I wish that it wasn't. It was 2016. I just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, we'll call him Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did the training with the owner in the mornings, and then for 2 nights, Michael trained me himself. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, checking guests in and just doing paperwork. My boss, who's the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training that I had to endure. It was my first night alone on that night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, large glass windows that were all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night windows like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, I'd say about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork when a man walks in and asks if we have any rooms available. Usually if someone is sketchy, my boss has me lie and say no. But this guy seemed normal at the time. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course. Just for one?" He replied yes, so I began creating the reservation on the computer. When I noticed he starts swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he was surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't any of my business, so I tried to just check him into the room as quickly as possible. I gave him his key, and he went on his way. At this point in time, I could definitely be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction as to what happens next. The man comes back from his room, slams his hand on the glass door, and causes me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I looked up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his head in through and says, "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my own room?" My only defense is trying to be helpful, so I replied, Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me get you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he's the one who trained me. It was the middle of the night, and he was asleep. I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back to me. I go into an absolute panic mode. I run into the back office and lock the door, and pulled out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection on you while working at night. Then I hear the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Hello? Why won't you let me in my room? Do you not like me?" Me being an absolute idiot, not standing my ground and calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to just take the situation on alone. I reply, "Hey, I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out, sir." Then I start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few deep breaths and then just step out of the office. The man was not there. He was now in the bathroom. I I started hearing him talk to himself, angrily saying, "Killer, killer." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he comes out, and I say, "Sir, your key was broken, I'm sorry. Just let me escort you to your room." He agrees, thankfully. I was wearing a long sleeve sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I started to walk outside, and he seems incessant on walking behind me. We begin making our way to the staircase and up toward his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure that he wasn't going to make some kind of move. He stops at a random room, and then I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and say, "Oh, that's the wrong room, sir. This is your actual room," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time he was going to someone else's room trying to open up the door, and I definitely felt bad for them. I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. The next guest I check in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye out and an ear out too. The next night the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told them that we were all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't seem to take me very seriously. I continued to work there on night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened. But to that strange man, to never ever meet again. And to anyone reading or listening to this, if you ever feel uncomfortable, always call the police. Thanks for reading.
Back in 2007, I started a tech job with an IP phone long distance company. The company is no longer around, and honestly, I don't even know how they stayed in business as long as they did. It was really just a pyramid scam, but thankfully I was on the IT side of things, so I didn't have to sell anything. It was a small typical tech support call center. The customers would call in, or Verizon Quest would call and say DT1 lines were down, or there were outages. I was the only female on the team, having to prove myself. It didn't take long, and the customers respected me for being able to handle things. After making my mark, I decided to take the 10-hour night shifts. I worked Wednesday through Saturday, from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., with an hour for lunch at 6 p.m. I was completely alone in the whole building. The rush to get out of the office at 6 p.m. was insane. I couldn't blame them, but I decided having 3 days off was better than 2. Like I said, I was by myself most nights. I would have to keep an eye on emails and make sure I answered all the calls. It was often a very slow shift. I would get a lot of video game, reading, and schoolwork done during this time, but sometimes I would just wander the building, walk all around just to get away from my desk for a time. I would have the phone system connected to my cell phone so no calls would be missed. This allowed me to go get a soda or get food and so on. One time when I was away from my desk, I was going down to the lunch room to grab a soda. The vending machine is on the basement floor. The basement had a wall of windows and one set of security doors, same for the main entrance, only there was one camera facing that door, but nothing else really to make me feel safe. I didn't like to go down to the basement much, because the back of the building faced an acre of dark woods. There was a walking path to the woods, but for some reason they didn't install lights for the walking path. Not really sure why that was, but it didn't help for the creepy factor. Sometimes I would see animals run past, but other times it felt like someone was watching me. I always tried my best to make it fast when I was getting a soda or a snack, but sometimes it didn't feel fast enough. So one night, I was making my way down to the basement of the building to get a soda. It was a slow dragging night, and I needed a little bit of caffeine for a pick-me-up. I counted my money as I walked to make sure I had enough. That way I would get in and get out quick. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dart from the glass door back into the darkness. I stopped dead in my tracks and tried to scan the forest, but like I said, it was just total blackness. I felt a bit of unease, and everything told me to turn on my heels and go back to my desk. But it was 9 p.m., and I had a fair bit of time left on my shift before I could blow this pop stand. I tried shaking the feeling off and briskly walked over to the soda machines and made my selection. The soda dropped, and as I bent over to get it, I heard a loud ping noise. It was as if someone had hit the glass with something. I stood straight up, and I felt the hair on my back and neck stand up. I slowly turned around and was completely scared that I would see someone out there. But as I made my full turn, I saw once again nothing but darkness. I thought this was a good time to book it back up to the main floor. I didn't even bother with the elevator. I went up the stairs, and I ran up them. My heart was already racing from having to go down there in the first place. Then the loud bang, now running up 2 flights of stairs. Once I got back to the desk, I sunk down in my chair and tried my best to calm down. It was just a noise. I was in the building with locked doors and locked inner offices. I kept saying over and over again in my head, it was nothing. I was relieved by that. But out of nowhere, I got a feeling that someone was watching me again. I peeked my head over the cubicle wall and looked around my office. Nothing seemed out of place until I turned towards the front of the building. Outside the first set of doors was a slender, tall, dirty male. He was cupping his hands around his eyes, trying to see past the reflection of the light inside. I dropped back down in my cubicle before he caught sight of me. He didn't look like anyone I had ever seen before in these offices, and it was a little past 9 p.m. There was no good reason why he was checking my office. As I sat in my chair, I heard the door shake. I slowly stood up and watched him pull the handles of the door, but they didn't budge to my relief. But as I watched him, he turns and faces me. His face looked bruised or dirty, I couldn't tell which. Once his eyes locked mine, he started banging the door harder and smacking the glass. I was so scared. It was the middle of the night. I was by myself and in the middle of the office building complex. I grabbed my headset and dialed 911. While getting an operator on the line, the guy was walking back and forth from one side of the glass door to the next. 911, what is your emergency? I need someone to come out here. There's a guy trying to break into my office building. While speaking to her, the guy disappeared from view. I tried to look in all directions, but I didn't see him. I knew that he wouldn't just walk off, not with how hard he was banging. All of a sudden, a good-sized rock came out of nowhere and smashed against the door. I screamed and went under my desk. The operator asked what happened, and I explained. She asked me if the glass was broken enough to let him in. I didn't want to stand up and look, but she told me in order to know where he was, I had to crawl from under my desk and peek over my cubicle. So I crawled out from under my desk and peeked over my cubicle wall and saw a huge crack down the first part of the door. I sank back down and told her, "Please have the police hurry." She said they were on their way. I've read tons of stories on this subreddit, and people say that the cops couldn't get there fast enough. They aren't kidding. It felt like time is standing still, and there's nothing you can do. Another smash against the door, but along with the glass breaking sounds, I could hear sirens coming towards my building. It was music to my ears. I told the operator that the police had arrived and thanked her for her support. I stood back up and looked over the cubicle wall, and all I could see was blue and red lights flashing wildly. But the thing is, I couldn't see where the man was. The top part of the door was completely smashed, and the rock was lying inside the entryway. One officer came to the front door, and the others were combing the area. The first officer that came into the building was a very kind man. He was patient with me and let me explain what I saw and what happened. Soon later, my boss arrived and checked up on me and the damage. At some point, my husband was called and was told that I would be escorted home by one of the officers. I took the next few days off and started looking for another job where I wasn't by myself all night. I went on to leave this job a month later and started at a credit card machine company. It was an office full of people, still a call center, but I felt safer, especially with the security cameras all over the building. Like I said before, this company is no longer around. It was bought by another company, and they basically liquidated all the funds. So dirty man who tried to break into my office, let's never meet again.